Back with another one. Today I'm going to give you a quick review and a few of my thoughts on Kraven the Hunter. So Kraven the Hunter is directed by J.C. Chandler, notably known for Triple Frontier, which came out in 2019, and A Most Violent Year, which came out in 2014. So action seems to be the genre that he dwells in the most, and Kraven the Hunter follows suit. Kraven the Hunter is the latest Sony Spider-Man villain movie without Spider-Man, and it stars Aaron Taylor Johnson, Russell Crowe, Ariana DeBose, Levi Miller, and Fred Hetchinger. So to give you a really brief synopsis of this film, basically Kraven the Hunter retrieves these abilities. He has a list of bad guys that he wants to kill. The bad guys end up kidnapping his brother, so save the brother, kill the bad guys, the predictable type stuff. I guess I'll start with the things I liked. The opening sequence was pretty solid to me. It showcased Kraven's abilities. So you see how strong he is, how fast he is, how he thinks. You see how strategic he is. While I was watching it, I couldn't help but to think how if Kraven and Spidey were to ever cross paths, Spider-Man would be caught off guard finding out in real time that Kraven isn't just an ordinary street level criminal, The opening sequence was pretty good. I thought it was important for the film to dive into Kraven's background, and just about the first half of the movie does just that. We get the origin story of Kraven the Hunter. A lot of people may not be too familiar with Kraven, and the audience needs insight on who he is, who he really is, why he chooses to do the things that he does, what made him change, and exactly how it happened, and we get to see all of that. We get to see the relationship dynamic between Kraven and his little brother, and we also get a closer look at the complex relationship that they have with their father. Russell Crowe is a very stern, no emotion, heartless type of guy, and Kraven and his little brother feel that nothing is ever good enough for him. We also get to see, I won't spoil it, but we get to see the events that took place that turned Kraven from this regular boy to embodying these beast-like, animal-like characteristics. I think that some people may feel that the origin story segment was drawn out a bit too much, and maybe it was, it was a couple of drop spots in there, but when I saw that this film was going to be a little over 2 hours, I thought that was a good sign, maybe they'll spend a significant amount of time making the audience empathize with this character and trying to get us to understand who he is, If the movie would have been like an hour and 26 minutes, it's like, okay, this is about to be garbage. I think that this film benefited from being rated R. The action scenes were a bit more edgy and the violence was more hardcore. It didn't hold back at all, and I like that. Let's see what it looks like to take a step away from the childlike tones. However, I think that Kraven the Hunter relied too heavily on action and didn't prioritize the writing, evoking or pulling some type of emotion from the audience. Not enough substance, just action, action, action. Like, we see a lot of things happen in this movie, but do we really care about what's happening? So I guess I get into the things where I felt the movie came up short in the conclusion of this Sony extended universe. The villains. Based on the trailer, you know that Rhino was in this movie, and to the point I mentioned earlier, we see what he's doing, but do we really care? His motives are shallow and predictable, and it's almost boring. I liked how they showed he can manipulate his transformation. I won't spoil that, but they teased that throughout the movie. But when we finally get to that big reveal, it kind of disappointed me. Like, it may be comic book accurate, but it just looks goofy. And I don't think the broad daylight scenes helped Rhino's big reveal at the end at all. Like, now we get to see how goofy it really looks. With this film being rated R, I was hoping for Rhino's big reveal to be more menacing, him to have a certain image. The broad daylight scene kind of just killed that for me. It kind of reminds me of the Jeepers Creepers franchise, like when Jeepers Creepers is in that cell or in the distance somewhere in the street in the dark, his look is more menacing. But when he's in broad daylight just jumping in the air, you get to see how goofy it looks, Another villain named the Foreigner, he basically counts to 3 while he hypnotizes people. That wasn't really needed in this movie. His character didn't add or bring any value to this movie at all. If you took his character out of this movie, the movie loses nothing, Spend time on what really matters, Focus on the writing. I think the biggest flaw with Kraven the Hunter and the Sony Extended Universe is that they suffer from identity crisis and which direction would be the best for them to go in as far as storytelling. I think it comes down to villains versus anti-heroes and the edge or fear factor that they each bring. For example, Spider-Man 2 portrays Kraven hunting beasts, animals, and people for trophies. He hunts for the mere thrill and challenge. He embodies a persona that supports him being a villain for the sake of being a villain. He has more of a fear factor. He's more menacing. Like, the anti-hero approach in the movie just feels like a cool guy that can hunt, if that makes sense. Which brings me to my factual opinion. Like, moving forward, if Sony or Marvel decide to make solo movies based on a superhero's foe, make it a full-fledged villain movie versus it being an anti-hero movie. Like, if you watch the Penguin series on HBO Max, throughout the show there are moments where you empathize with this character, but there are multiple instances where you see his true nature, and especially at the end, you are reminded that he is a bad guy. He is a villain, a snake in his true essence. And I didn't get that villain vibe from Kraven. I just think that Sony and Marvel will find more success if they lean towards the villains being true bad guys. Like, get away from the anti-hero stuff. Now that the Sony Extended Universe is completed, I can't help but to think, like, what was the purpose of this universe, you know? Like, what stories were told that actually had an impact? What movies left a mark? We got Morbius, all the Venom movies, Madam Web, and now Kraven the Hunter. And Venom did have success at the box office, but ultimately I think these movies survived off the hope of maybe Spider-Man showing up at some point, and they knew people would show up just off the strength of that. Nothing important really happened in any of these movies, whereas movies like Winter Soldier finds out Bucky is alive, not Cap has to go against his best friend. Civil War, the Avengers are split up. Infinity War, Thanos snaps half the world away. Or The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Gwen Stacy dies. X-Men The Last Stand, Jean kills Professor X. Now Wolverine has to kill Jean. Like, there are certain moments that define these films, and I just didn't get that in the Sony Extended Universe. If I had to rate and categorize Kraven the Hunter, I would probably give it a 4 out of 10 and put it in my new category, HTGT. Here today, going tomorrow. Like, all in all, this movie was not good. The writing was mediocre. There was a lot of action in there, no substance. We don't really care about what was going on. The villains were horrible. Villains in there that didn't need to be in there at all. The way some of the villains looked, just looked goofy. Kraven the Hunter, here today, going tomorrow. Yep, and those are my thoughts on Kraven the Hunter. If you've seen it, let me know in the comments what you thought about the film. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting me. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.